Thank you for joining us again for another episode of Rebuilding the Black Family. We're thrilled that you're joining us. You know, the success of any community is greatly impacted or determined by its relationship with money. Our understanding of money, how to use it, how to build wealth, are essential elements of community development. And so, on this episode of Rebuilding the Black Family, David Grant will be discussing this important topic with our guest, Eshe Simba. Stay tuned.
Thank you, Brother Carl, for that beautiful intro. And yes, introducing our last and final guest, Eshe Simba, who is a licensed insurance broker, financial advisor, and founder of Sugar Plum Scrubs, a skincare and self-care brand selling natural sugar scrubs. Eshe works alongside families and youth in Ontario to increase financial literacy, encourage financial planning, and build wealth. She specializes in life and health insurance, as well as retirement and education savings plans. And it just so happens that she's my cousin. So... Cuz it's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, ma'am, to share your knowledge. So we want to get right into it. So today we want to talk about Black people and money, Black people's relationship with money, right?
Yeah.
You work with Black people. You work with Black people when it comes to money. So I want to know, in your experience, because I understand, especially when we look at the virtual generation, right? You're able to work with people throughout Ontario, throughout Canada, just wherever. What has been your experience working with Black people when it comes to their handling, their understanding, just their interaction with money? What's been your experience?
Well, the thing about money, and especially Black people, is we can't talk about Black people without referencing, our history, right? So for the longest time, we were not managing our own money, right? And it's only recently that not only have we been able to manage our own families, but now we're actually taking a look at the different financial tools and resources that are available to a lot of people. I find that when I talk to a lot of my clients, they just feel like they're behind. There's a lot of confusion around money, around the tools we use to make money, around around investing. So there's a lot of, I would say it seems almost like a cloud that kind of covers money making and how money works. And then, of course, there's that piece around trust. So it's hard to let go of something that you work so hard to earn. And it's hard to risk it, if that makes sense, by trusting different organizations to actually handle, hold, and manage our money.
So that trust, I'm going to presume it ties into our history of constantly just being betrayed in so many ways, shapes, or forms, especially when it comes to how our wealth has been extracted from our respective countries back home, throughout the Caribbean, but definitely back home in our respective home in Africa. Would you say that's where, I guess, the historical antecedents are of that mistrust, and now in the present day, we just struggle to trust something that we are only, from what you're saying, recently coming into interaction with on a more regular basis and having a bit more control of? Is that what you're saying, where some of that trust comes from, the trust issues come from?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's only recently that we, as a community, have gotten adjusted, I think, to the concept of money being separate from the actual resource.
And how recently would you say, if you could put a number to it? Just ballpark.
I would say that when we transitioned from being African people to being here in, I guess we could call it the diaspora, we went from owning land, owning, having agriculture, having cattle, right? That was our indicator of wealth.
Yes.
Right? How we managed that and how we managed our relationships with people, those were our indicators of wealth.
Yes.
of course, there were certain resources that had more value, i.e. gold, or I believe in some cultures, you have the cowrie shell, for example.
Yes.
Those were the indicators of wealth, as well as jewelry and
Yes.
things like that.
Yeah.
Then you transfer over, and now we're in a society where we have capitalism and we're dealing with paper money.
Yes.
Now we're dealing with digital currency. And I
Yes.
feel like we haven't had enough time to really process that, especially considering we didn't really get reparations for the amount of time we spent
It's true.
enslaved
Yeah.
as human beings. And now we're finally being able to make a living. Arguably, we're not being paid what we're worth.
Yes.
And at the same time, we're having to manage with concepts that make no sense to us, whether it's inflation, whether it's investments, whether it's, stocks versus bonds versus, so we have a lot of catching up to do, especially when it comes to how much wealth we have, what we believe we're worth. So that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, that's a whole nother conversation. It's true.
So we're playing catch up. We're playing catch up. And so when we talk about our relationship with money, it really starts with our relationship with ourselves and how much we value ourselves.
Yes.
And we're learning. We're
Yeah.
in this place where we're learning. And it's a shame that we have to be in a place where we're learning when there are so many people who have been taking advantage of monetary tools for so much longer than we've been able to. If I were to give you an exact time frame, I don't think I would give you an exact time frame.
I was about to say, because I think you gave us a pretty good understanding of where that time frame would have essentially originated, right?
Yeah.
From the time that we were dislocated and came here to the Americas, or even back in place in Europe, like Portugal, for in Lisbon.
Yeah.
And we were stripped of our physical connection to wealth.
Exactly.
And now we are come to this not only foreign, but essentially pretty new and I guess made up understanding of wealth, i.e. via paper money.
Yeah.
Essentially, we're talking that's around 1700s where it around originated, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's pretty good, summation of what that looked like.
Yeah.
Already really good points, and I really appreciate it. One piece I want to go to is now talking a bit more about those tools, because you said there's been tools that we're slowly catching up on.
Yeah.
So you may have some Black people tuning in like, what are you talking about? I thought we just go to the bank, make a transaction, and we go home, buy a house, get a mortgage, and then die. Like, what are these tools now that Black people should be knowledgeable about in today's day and age?
So there are so many. And to sum that up, I would say this. Not only do we have the banks that we go to, we also have, insurance companies. We have, mortgage brokers. We've got, oh my goodness, so many different, let's say, institutions that offer, let's call them plans or contracts in which you can store your money and or invest your money.
Yeah.
In addition to that, you have things like loans. You have, so the types of tools that are out there are plentiful.
Okay.
Right. And they vary based on the person. So depending on your financial needs, depending on your risk tolerance, depending on your financial situation, right? There are tools out there that can benefit you. What we need to be able to do as a community, though, is we need to be able to turn to each other and, to begin with, actually be honest about our financial situation. Because that's kind of where it starts.
Yeah, talk more about that. What do you mean, be honest?
I find, so I work with a lot of clients who, in terms of their financial situation, either they start off a little bit confused as to where they should be, like where exactly should I be in relation to my age or my career and so on. So there's a bit of confusion there. But then there's also the confusion around, this secrecy. I think money in our community is often shrouded in secrecy. Like, we're not supposed to talk about it. Like, our parents don't share, for example, what it takes to be able to pay rent. How much are they making? How much are they putting towards their resources like groceries or the bills. Like
Yeah.
these are things that we're not really having conversations
Should
about.
be transparent about.
And I feel like
Yeah.
we should be. I feel like we should be more transparent about how much it costs to live,
Yeah.
but also more transparent with like our community in terms of our friends and so on, to let them know where we're at financially. What are we spending our money on? Where are we investing? What investments have worked? What hasn't? Because if we can have conversations like that with each other, then that honesty translates to
Yeah.
having conversations with these big quote unquote institutions.
True.
Right?
True.
We
So it has
often
to start
go
internal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Why often we go into banks and we want to present a particular image, and I think images are our downfall, because if
Yeah.
we're not in a positive financial space, we can't get the help we need if we're not being honest.
It's true. It's true.
But that comes down also to trust, being able to
Yep.
trust financial institutions and being able to trust agents, brokers, and so on to give us the best financial advice, regardless of what lines their pockets. So we have a little bit of there's a piece of us that maybe there's some shame there. Maybe
Yeah.
we feel like when we are around other people, other communities, we see so much wealth, just like so much
Yeah.
access to wealth, whether it's resources and so on.
Yeah.
And because we don't have that, maybe we have a bit of
Insecurity?
of insecurity around
And
that.
some shame. Yeah.
And then you listen to all of our music. Like I was
Talk to me.
guilty pleasure. I was listening to
Yeah.
Cardi B in the car, and she's talking about how much money she has, and
Yeah.
how she fixed her teeth, and blah blah blah. But what we rarely hear is, how did you go about
Doing
creating that wealth? Yes, we see you reaching this so-called fame,
Ooh.
right?
Okay.
And we see you, flashing all this money. And this is something that happens in our community.
Mm-hmm.
We make it, and then we don't tell anybody, what the financial tools were for us to get there.
Because it's like we either don't trust them,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
Or for two, we're individualistic in that sense,
Yeah.
where it's like almost that meritocracy. Well, I pulled myself up by my bootstraps.
Yes.
I worked
Yes.
hard.
Yes,
You Black people need to do the same,
exactly.
rather than sharing those
Yeah.
tips.
You have to share. And I think it's important to be and I don't want to just use celebrities as an example, but I'm just thinking in terms of our community and how we see wealth or how we perceive wealth.
Yeah.
We always talk like in our youth, we know, okay, if you can make it in sports or you can make it in music,
Yeah.
then you're going to hit you're going to hit the jackpot.
Yeah.
You're done. You've made it.
Although that's a very small percentage. Yeah.
A very small percentage.
Yeah.
And we're in high school, we're thinking that, the creative space is where we thrive, because nobody really tells us, this is how much you can earn if you are a doctor, or this is what it looks like
Yeah.
to succeed in tech.
Yeah.
This is what it looks like. We don't hear that type
No.
of thing. People aren't sharing that.
Yeah.
People are sharing it more now.
Yep.
But I know back when I was in high school,
yeah.
there wasn't a conversation
Same with
about,
me. Yeah.
right? We weren't talking about that.
Yeah.
So what I would say is we definitely need to have more conversations about, what were our challenges with resources. I remember hearing my grandfather talk about investing back in the day and some of the investment woes that he might have gone through.
Yeah.
I remember hearing my aunts and uncles talking about the businesses that they started and how they started a business, and not just what business they owned, but how they went about networking in order to make those connections. Those are the things that I hear from my parents. And so I'm very lucky to have that
Yes.
influence in my life and see how money moves
Yep.
In that way. And also having enough confidence in yourself to try to earn a living,
Yes.
what it looks like, and to be independent, what it looks like to invest in your business before you're seeing returns and so on.
No,
So,
that's you raise a lot of good points that, Ashley, when you're talking about, for one, what we associate when, who we associate having money with, right?
Yeah.
And what fame, what wealth looks like to us.
Yeah.
And we look at the celebrities, we look at the athletes, but when you actually look at it, and when you actually, when you read, when you listen to these interviews, they may be rich, but they're not wealthy. Because I can't remember what show I was watching, but the rich ones are the ones who receive the checks. The wealthy ones are the ones who cut the checks, right?
Yeah.
And when you think about it, it's true. The ones who manage the athletes or to manage the musicians,
Exactly.
they're wealthy, right?
Yeah.
The distribution labels that manage the artists
Absolutely.
are wealthy. The artists are rich. Can they become wealthy? Well, of course, if they
Yeah.
make financially appropriate decisions.
Yeah.
But then I also hear you saying, on one hand, that Black people, we struggle with trusting one another.
Yeah.
Because it may start internally, which actually is going to take us to our other question. Struggles with maybe some of the maybe internal sort of self-hatred that we're projecting onto others, right? But then on the flip side, you know, there's also members of our community who don't even trust one another to be honest about our internal struggles with money.
Absolutely.
So we don't trust the banking institutions. Okay, that's fair, but we don't even trust one another to help one another.
Exactly.
So, and hearing you say, what I hear you saying is that you even have some clients who come to you. You're supposed to be the one, if anybody, that they trust. They trust you, and there is even some of that struggle to be honest about the financial situation, where you may have to tease some of that out to say, so and so, come on now, like let's talk about this. So
now it's not just our community that
no, of course not.
that that hesitates that way, because of course I'm in a position where I'm asking you some really personal questions, things that maybe you're not used to talking about.
Yes.
I've had clients who, and it really just comes down to like financial, the psychology of like finance.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And, you know, you specialize in the psychology of psychology.
Yeah.
Whereas over on this side, you know, it takes talking to people to learn how they see money and how their relationships with money are formed. And so I've talked with a lot of young women who are very, who their mothers have pretty much taught them that they need to be the only person who knows anything about how much money they have, because in the long run, if something were to happen with their child and their spouse or their partner, like were to have, you know, issues in terms of their relationship, and were to somehow end up, how do I say this? Were to end up, you know, battling for custody, for example.
Yeah.
Right. They're the way that they've been taught to handle their finances is to handle their finances completely separate from their spouse.
Yes.
Which on the one hand is like,
in our family too,
right?
yeah.
You know, on the one hand, it's like, okay, yeah, you should be independent when it comes to your finances. Have a separate bank account. Have all of those things. And I respect that.
Yes.
But without the communication, you also kind of limit yourself to opportunities to grow your wealth by virtue of having your partner be a part of that process, whether it's tax planning, right? That transparency with your partner and that communication with your partner could allow you to learn other ways of earning income. I know a lot of men tend to be more inclined, more risk inclined, more inclined to take risks, to be, to seek out, you know, ways to make money. Whereas women tend to be the savers.
More conservative.
Right?
Yeah.
So when we talk about like rebuilding the Black family, right? We have to have a bit of patience, I guess, and grace with one another.
Yeah.
Because there's room for both the saving and the conservative.
That's a healthy balance.
Yeah.
That's a complementary relationship.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if you can have both of those things and be communicative and learn from one another, then it really, at the end of the day, if your relationship does dissolve, which ideally we would hope it wouldn't,
but like,
you would have both learned something.
Exactly.
But to leave a situation like that and only one person has been benefiting from earning or making wealth, nobody's happy at that.
So, I had a question. I know where I'm going. So that I think is a nice segue into my next question. When we think about, I guess, those barriers to creating wealth, to handling money, right?
Yeah.
What would you say are internal and external barriers? And before you go, when I say internal, essentially what I'm talking about, I'll use an example, you know, when I think of myself, when I think of, you know, some of my family members, even my friends, we many of us talk about this fear, as I would even say, I would dare to say a pathological fear that exists in our community when it comes to not wanting to let go of any sort of money or possession.
Yeah.
even if there's a chance of it doubling back and you getting it back with
Yeah.
interest, right? I know I've seen it with my parents. I know I've seen it with, my in-laws. I know I've seen it, amongst our family members, some of them who, when they see, let's say, my wife and I making certain financial decisions that take that risk and we invest in that, there's that hesitance, like, but what if? The what if, right?
Yeah.
So that I can see is being an internal barrier to really advancing your money because, well, I'm comfortable with it staying here. I'm complacent.
Yeah.
But then that leaves you stagnant.
Yeah.
So that's when I'm thinking internal barrier, that's where I'm going. So what are some more internal barriers, or maybe you can add on to that as well as external barriers?
I would say that oftentimes, okay, so definitely there's the fear around investing in something because, you're feeling like you're going to lose something. And, it's a justifiable fear because people are losing losing money, losing wealth. People are losing every day.
Of course,
right?
Course.
And it's a process that we go through. And so what I would say to that, if there are people who are concerned about losing resources, is this. If, and remember I mentioned, we're a lot more comfortable with tangible wealth.
Yes.
Right. We're a lot more comfortable with, purchasing a home because we can see
You
that,
can
we can
see
feel
it.
it, we can touch it.
Yeah.
We're more comfortable with starting a business, especially starting one on our own because, we feel like we can rely on ourselves.
Yeah. And that's what we did back home, right?
Exactly.
We started businesses back in country and
absolutely
you could see the money, the transactional relationships.
You can go to Africa, you can go to, whether it's Kenya, Tanzania, you see plenty of people who have their own businesses who are, networking in order to do that, who are investing their money into their business.
Yes. But it's their business.
Exactly.
Yes.
So the thing is when you do that, there's a risk you're taking. And often because we are willing to take that risk, we're able to also see the reward, right? So if you're a farmer, you can't sell the cow before you've purchased the mother of the cow,
it's
right?
True.
Like
yeah.
You can't sell the cow before you've bred the cow, before you've fed the cow, before you've made sure that the cow is healthy.
Yes.
It's the same thing for investing in almost anything. And I think we need to start looking at life through the lens of investments, right? Through the lens of what does it look like when you are pursuing someone in a relationship. So let's go there. If you are pursuing a relationship with someone, whether it's a friendship or a partnership of some sort, you do your research, right? You want to know things about this person. You're going to ask questions.
It's true.
You're going to do your what they call
your homework.
Your
Carfax.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're going to look it up, right? And we do this with our, when we buy our devices, like our phones or things like that.
Has the best review, all of that.
Exactly. So you're going to do your research. You're going to ask somebody maybe for their advice. You're going to turn to your friend and be like, what do you think of this guy? I've been talking to this guy for this long. These are the experiences I've had. This is what I've learned. What do you think?
Oh, what's his IG? Let me search him up. Right?
Yep. So we know how to invest. It's very straightforward.
I like that
when we invest in each other as relationships and things go south, oftentimes we're like, oh, we're blaming ourselves for it, or we are blaming the other person, right? And so what I would say to people who are thinking about investing is start thinking about investing in all aspects of your life. When you do your research into something and you ask the right questions and you are engaging with people in a way that is meaningful, that allows you to build relationships, build connections, that's an investment. You're investing your time.
Yes.
Your time is money.
Yes.
We know this.
It's true.
So when that relationship or friendship or partnership falls flat, oftentimes we're able to pick ourselves up and say, you know what? I did what I needed to do to figure out if this was right for me. And because it isn't right for me, that's when I leave. That's when I exit.
Yes.
So we need to know when we exit.
Right?
Okay. We need to know, when do we leave the situation? When is the situation no longer valuable for us? And because we're so hesitant about letting go.
It's true.
Right? Like you mentioned.
True. Yeah.
That's where we get into trouble when we're investing. So whether it's a house, whether it's a car, whether it's a resource, I came across a young man a couple months ago who, had purchased a property, and he's seen what the market is doing right now. And, the economy is in a bit of I would call it a Right now, it's very choppy. We don't know. It's going up, it's going down. It's kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
And he sold his house. And some people would just kind of hold on to it and hope for the best.
Yeah.
But he decided, okay, no, I'm selling this. I'm purchasing something else. And he moved on from that investment. Now, whether that investment was going to somehow quadruple in 4 years doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But he decided that he's going to place value where he's like where he places value is what matters.
He
more
took
to him.
that risk and
He
he was
took a
willing
risk
to deal
right?
with it.
When
Yeah.
he purchased the house and to begin with, he was taking a risk. When he didn't do that by himself because he had advisors.
Yeah, it's
he
true.
has mentors.
Yes.
And so this propensity to try to do things on our own and hold on to things just because
That's an internal
right?
barrier, 100%. That
yeah.
individualism. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So that type of a thing, we need to let go of that. Asking questions and being willing to be embarrassed is the equivalent of starting a business and being willing to ask people for their business. I can't
Pride.
tell you. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't have that.
No.
You're trying to make money. There's no such thing. You're trying to make money. There's no such thing.
Yeah.
We see billionaires losing billions of dollars, gaining billions of dollars. They're constant. Okay, let's not say billions, but maybe millions.
Millions. Yeah,
Right?
yeah. But it's because they're seeking out advice.
Yeah. They're seeking out advice. They're taking risks, and when the risk goes flat, they get out.
Yep.
And they ask for advice, and they're connected. So it's really a matter of being willing to take risk, but also being willing to be honest with yourself about connecting with people and asking for advice.
So what are some external barriers now? So we talked about the internal, now external. So let's say you have a black youth or black mom, black father, black family, right?
Yeah.
They say, hey, Eshe, this is what's happening. We're ready to do all of that.
Yeah.
But then there may be some external barriers that they may not have anticipated. Maybe you've seen, right? That you're going to try to anticipate for them, especially when we think of us as black people and the countless external barriers we've had to face.
Yeah.
What, in your experience, have been some of those external barriers with that our people have to anticipate or may come across?
I think the one example that I'll use here has to do with our income.
Okay.
Right. I find that oftentimes we will take positions and let's call this an external barrier. We do a comparing thing, right?
Okay.
Where we're comparing our life to what we're seeing, whether it's on social media and so on. So that's an internal.
yeah.
But the external is we are working for companies that don't necessarily value us. Right. And when we get to the table and we're having that interview, what should be a negotiation isn't a negotiation because we're coming to that table pretty desperate. Right.
I think I know where you're going. Yeah.
So we're not asking for the pay that we deserve.
No.
And we're definitely not going to be offered it because that's not in any business owner's best interest to pay you what you're worth.
Yeah.
So there's that. So we struggle with that. And I find a lot of the young people that I work with, they're like, where's my money going? I have these expenses and the expenses are absolutely reasonable. They're
course.
not overdoing it in any capacity. They have these expenses, but when they compare that, we contrast it to their income's just not enough to accommodate that.
Yeah, that's an external. Yeah.
So I would call that an external factor. I would also say that I had a conversation with a lady the other day who basically told me she's been working at the same place for 20 odd years. She's pretty much tired of it. She wants to get out of there.
So let it go.
She won't.
This goes back to your
Right? She
your
won't.
point.
And it's we have to be willing to change our positions. Let's call it loyalty piece. It's not doing us any justice. I know, for example, family members of mine have left positions after every 5 years because there's this process of renewal you have to go through. You can't
So I'm not crazy for doing that.
No,
okay.
no.
So I'm like, I'm getting
No.
the itch, right?
This is a life journey.
Yeah.
Right. This isn't you don't get your dream job and then just sit there. You have to do things. You have to take risks, whether it's traveling, whether it is starting a business. Something like starting a business, you may not be necessarily interested in owning your own business, but starting a business can introduce you to how people interact with society, what society, how society views people who create businesses or income opportunities for people versus people who are making, who are, career oriented. And there's nothing wrong with being career oriented. But if you want to have a better idea of how the world works, how your employer is thinking, what contribution you make to that business, it'd be wise to do some research and see what other ways you can contribute to the economy.
So what void you can fill with whatever respective business opportunity that comes about. Okay.
Exactly. And then it's about, and I think we were talking about external factors, because I can definitely, I can ramble.
No, it's fine. No, you're on track. You're good. You're good.
When we think about these external factors, one of the things that comes to mind is like time management. We've been conditioned to believe that our best management of our time is spending the most possible time working.
Wow.
I beg to differ.
Wow. Yeah.
I beg to differ, and I beg to differ for the reason that...
What would be your refute? Yeah.
Yes, you can earn money. You can spend your time earning money. But if you aren't spending your time spending your money, i.e. investing your money in something that you value, you're wasting your time.
So people who are about this hustle mentality, you know, especially, you know, us as Black people, oh, we got to hustle. I got 2-3 jobs. I'm working here. I'm working here. All that time they're allotting to working to make the money, they're losing out on time in investing the hard-earned money that they have.
Exactly. So not only investing your money, but investing your time in learning. So yes, I'm a financial advisor. And I can tell you all the different ways that you can use your money in different financial instruments. But what I cannot, well, I can tell you, but what I can encourage you to do, but I can't force you to do, is actually go out there and live your life. Learn something.
Wow.
Go somewhere, learn a different way of using financial resources. We are heavily invested in the West, heavily invested in North America, heavily invested in the United States. We're in an interesting time. And when I traveled to the other side of the world, I was introduced, not only our motherland, I was introduced to these other economies that are thriving.
Oh, you're not talking about just when you went, you know, to various countries in Africa. You're talking about even when you went to Europe and all these other places. Okay.
I spent time in, for example, Qatar.
Yeah. Oh, you were in Qatar.
A very limited amount of time.
Okay.
But I was introduced to the fact that these countries that the West has for a very long time, let's call it demonized, by virtue of, I guess, their chosen religion. Yeah. They're doing very well financially.
Oh, they're doing exceptional. I have some people that are in that Gulf region. Yeah.
And while a lot of us, you know, we're heavily invested, like our assets are not diversified.
No.
We are heavily invested in the U.S. We are heavily invested in Canada.
Yes.
Things are shifting. You know, China is where we get all of our resources from. Is it not time to do some... You have to do it's time to do some reading about these other economies that are, that we are dependent upon.
It's true. Just look at your toys, look at your clothes.
We're very vulnerable.
Yes.
We're very vulnerable. If we can't walk into a store and buy fast fashion from China, where are we going to get our clothing?
It's true. It's true.
Where are we going to, and if we're relying on other economies for oil and gas, right? When we have this whole situation in Russia, you see how, and this situation being the war that's going on between Russia and Ukraine.
Yes.
There are a lot of economies that are dependent upon Russia for oil.
Yes.
And this inflation thing that's happening to us is related to that. We're seeing gas prices skyrocket. This is a great time to start doing some research on what exactly is going on and how we can diversify our own assets to put us in a place where we're not just reliant solely on one economy.
Okay. That's excellent.
That's all I would say there. Now, I'm not saying go and try to invest in Qatar. That's not what I'm saying. No. I'm saying do some research, because there are growing economies that we can be invested in.
What I hear you saying is, Black people, stop having a provincial mentality, right? Stop thinking locally. Stop thinking.
Yeah, we're not a local we're not a local world anymore. We're a global world. We're all interconnected.
Yes.
So you can't be just a citizen of one particular country.
No.
You can't. It's irresponsible.
Yeah, and I guess you can't only think that the respective place where you live, i.e. in the West, Canada, the U.S., maybe even the U.K., that is how everybody else in the world operates.
No.
Because it's true when you say, when you leave those places, I even think, and this is kind of sort of related, but not, I guess it is sort of related. My wife and I, we went to Indonesia, and, we stopped off in the Philippines. We had a very long layover, right? And we stayed in the Marriott, right? That was there. And the Marriott there, when I say that's a 5-star hotel. Out here, you'll go to Mississauga and say, yeah, it's a 4-star hotel on the Hilton. You go in, it's not no 4-star hotel. But you don't know that if you've never left Mississauga. You don't know that if you never left Ontario.
Yeah.
But when you are going to a place and they say 5-star, when they say they're going to dine you out, now, unfortunately, we know some of the exploitation of the locals. That there's a whole issue there. But my point is just expanding your mind. When my wife and I went there, I said, hold on. This is what the other side, this is how they live. You know what I mean? Or part of some of the members, how they live. And when you see that, when you see other things, that play out in terms of in the various economies, in Indonesia, in the Philippines, and when you go to the other parts, it helps to expand your range of possibilities.
Absolutely.
So when you come back to the financial realm, you're saying when you have the ability, if you have the opportunity or the accessibility to travel or just to read up on places outside of those places, even if you do nothing else, it opens up the range of possibilities, especially when you hear from sisters like yourself. You say, listen, I've done it. I can tell you right now, I can be an ambassador to say this is not all, this is not the only thing that you can be, i.e. in Canada and the U.S. So I think that's important. You're helping Black people understand the range of possibilities and keeping up with the times.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Because I think sometimes we as Black people struggle with being stuck in the past and reliving the glory days where we had kingdoms. Yes, we had infinite wealth and all of that, right? Yeah. It's important. We need to recognize that.
But that wealth was not measured in the same way that wealth is measured now.
That's it.
I would strongly argue that we, and I guess it's just another piece. It's another maybe internal thing. We have to start reimagining wealth in terms of what we value and what matters. In the Western world, we don't value relationships as much as we should.
No.
Whether that's friendships, platonic friendships, or our relationships with our elders.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, it's imperative.
Those are the things that we can't put a dollar sign
and it's not
on.
tangible per se. Yeah.
Exactly. But if when I go 20 years down the line and I think back to the conversations and the relationships that I've been able to build with my grandparents, those will influence my future decisions in ways that are paramount. I would encourage people, it starts with definitely self-value, because the relationships that we have are important. The relationships that we have will lead us to connecting with people and asking questions. So when I think about how I want to look back on my life. So for example, maybe when I'm 60, 70, the stories that my grandparents have told me, the experiences that I've had with my family and with friends, those are the things that are of extreme value to me. And in order for those things to have value, I have to have had experiences with them. And those experiences will come in the form of trying something new, engaging in activities. And I mention engaging in activities because, now I'm going to jump off on a little bit of a tangent.
Go ahead.
When I look at the elders in our community, how they spend their retirement, it's very sad because they just sit at home.
I know, it's true.
So that's another thing with our community, They sit at home and they have these dreams of, traveling to Jamaica, because, of course, that's where my background is. Where I'm going to live in Jamaica when I retire and I'm going to travel. Saving your travel for your retirement
is detrimental.
You're not going to do it.
No.
You're tired.
Yeah.
You have worked your whole life.
Yeah.
You are likely dealing with some sort of illness or injury by that point.
You've probably just attained the amount of money you have finally envisioned for your life.
And then, even then,
not to spend that.
This whole lifelong thing about conserving your resources, it doesn't just go away when you turn 65.
No.
You're still going to have that same mentality. So I would encourage all young people to focus on building not only experiences but learning opportunities.
Okay.
Right?
Excellent.
If you seek out learning opportunities, you seek out experiences, you seek out networking opportunities. Once you get to retirement age, you can sit down and tell your stories to whether it's your grandchildren or have something to look back on, or all the photos in your space and so on. Other communities I've found will be a lot more active in retirement age.
It's true.
Whether it's physically active,
Yep.
which is also very important.
I was about to say, you see the Chinese walking, doing their walks, their Tai Chi. You see the Indians who go to Brampton and Mississauga.
Yeah.
They're doing their walks, their community gatherings.
And
It's
those
true.
community gatherings are a big piece.
Yes.
So when we talk about, it's very important, of course, to advance your career. Very
Yes.
important. We need the financial resources, and we're at a bit of a disadvantage. But it's also important engaging in the physical activities where you should be investing your time. And invest your time in creating community networks so that when you're in retirement age and you've
Yes.
lost your spouse, you still have community.
You still have community. Wow. That's all part of wealth.
That's wealth building.
That's wealth. And
That's
that
wealth
takes us
building.
to our end, because I think I want you to just give us even a couple just to add to a list. So, just what are some non-negotiable items that need to be on every Black person's list when it comes to creating wealth? Because you've really helped, I think, reconceptualize what wealth looks like. Wealth, we oftentimes think, are just simply assets, right? Having land and things along those lines. That's solely what many Black people have been sold to believe. That's wealth. But you're saying, but there's also friendship wealth. There's also that emotional wealth. You have a brand, not just in skincare, but self-care.
Yeah.
So me being a therapist, there's mental wealth,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Being able to have that sustainability. So what would you say comprehensively, or at least not comprehensively, but just some that you would add to a list of wealth, of how to create wealth amongst Black people? What should Black people add to that?
So you mentioned, we usually think about wealth in terms of assets. Absolutely.
Yes.
Those assets do not come to you without relationships. Right.
Okay.
So I highly suggest that one invest in having land. Absolutely.
Of
I
course.
highly suggest that one invest in real estate. I highly suggest that one invests in the stock market. I think it's important to know how money moves through the economy.
Of course.
That's one of the ways that it does so. I would say do your research into digital currencies. We are in a digital economy. It would be irresponsible to not have some knowledge of what money is used for. I know we hear about the digital art. What is it? I've lost my words.
I'm trying to think of it as well.
No, it's gone. I'm just
Okay.
going to let it be. When it comes to me, I'll say it. But definitely do your research. But beyond just doing your own self-research, ask people questions. You can't learn about everything on your own, and you can't invest in everything.
Reduce that pride.
Exactly. So have conversations with people in order to figure out where your investments should go. Non-negotiables in terms of, and if I were to use what tools that I particularly offer people, I would say you have to have your basics. If you're building a life, if you're building a family, you want to protect your family. So
How
you
do you
need
do
to
that?
have things like life insurance. That's a non-negotiable. You should have it from when you're young.
No more GoFundMe pages. No more GoFundMe pages.
No.
Buy life insurance.
Yeah. Yeah. Please. You also definitely you have your bank accounts. You have your savings. You have your and let's say this. You of course, when you purchase your home, you have things like a mortgage. You might not purchase it outright. There's nothing wrong with that. I find a lot of people are hesitant about things like loans.
Yep.
Have education savings plans. Use tools that and it's interesting because I can say all of the different, I can say buy stocks, I could say buy bonds, I could say invest in
Cryptocurrency or ETF or whichever. Yep.
I could say make sure that you get dividends, but it depends on the person. Because if you are a very low risk person, but you have a high income and you have a lot of wealth, you can possibly earn just enough by investing in assets that give you dividend income. That might be sufficient for you.
Yeah.
So what I would say to that is you need to speak with people. And so that really comes full circle. Speak to a financial advisor, whether you're going to work with them or not.
Like S.J. Simba.
Speak with one, because
Yes.
if you don't speak to anybody,
Yes.
you're making decisions in a bubble.
And in order to speak to somebody, you have to work through
Yeah.
your trust issues.
Yeah.
When it comes to not just people, but even institutions. And in order to help even on the external piece, for you to work through some of that mistrust, this is where the financial advisors come in.
Yeah.
To help make you feel not alone in that process.
Exactly. You can't do
All
all the
right.
research on your own.
Yep.
So you need to rely on other people.
Agreed.
And it's in the same way as the relationships you take on in your personal life. You cannot, for example, you cannot have a family on your own.
No.
So you're going to have to rely on somebody. And
Although they're trying to
sometimes-
prove you otherwise. But we'll leave that for another day.
even if you try to do it on your own,
You
you still
still
need
need-
community. There's somebody that's going to be there who's
Yep.
going to help you through that process. So what
Yep.
I would say is, if you are in a position where you are looking for financial wealth,
Yes.
you need to get in touch with somebody who can help you. Ask for advice.
Okay.
Lean on the people around you, and know that there will be challenges.
Okay.
You don't become a millionaire overnight.
Yeah.
Your first investment could potentially be your game changer, but at the same time, it might not be. And you have to be comfortable and confident in that.
Thank you, Cuz, for those words of wisdom. Thank you, everybody, for
Thank
tuning
you.
in and viewing this. You heard it here first. Financial wealth is one part of wealth. We have to understand wealth from a holistic stance.
Exactly.
Ashley gave a very beautiful overview of what sort of tangibles you can take away from this to invest in yourself as well as the greater community. So please and thank you. Like, subscribe, share our podcast, and we'll see you next episode. It is the truth that does set you free.